So, you're an aspiring game developer looking to build the next big shooter. On your first pass, you found your weapon clips into walls. You look up a tutorial, learn about camera stacks, and boom, no more clipping. From there, you find everything looks pretty stiff. You look up a tutorial, learn how to build in weapon sway, and pow, it looks much more fluid. And then as you're trying to craft the feel of your game, you notice every shot you take is exactly in the center of your screen. You look up a tutorial, learn about procedural recoil, and kablooey, you've added some variance to each shot. But let's say that's not enough. Let's say you want to have more realistic handling of your weapons. You want to shoot from the gun rather than from the player's camera, and you want to have the weapon move out of the way when you're close to a wall. And you find this tutorial, and I will do my best to teach you exactly those two things. Okay, so here I have a very basic scene set up using the Character Movement Fundamentals package, which I picked up from Humble Bundle some time ago. The package comes with a number of character controllers and this map to test them all in. We'll be using their first-person controller because I wanted to keep things simple. What we're doing here today can be set up in any first-person project if you really wanted to. Really, I've only made two tweaks to the setup here. First, I've added this cube to take place of our weapon, and then on it, I've added this shooting script which fires a raycast every time we click. All it does is whenever we hit something, it draws a debug line from the origin point to wherever the raycast hits. It's a setup that anybody building an FPS should be familiar with. If we take a look at our code, you can see what we're doing specifically. The script itself is very simple. At the top you can see our two fields for range, and for the game object we're going to be using as our origin point. All we're doing is checking every frame for if the left mouse button has been clicked, and if so, we're shooting a raycast from our origin's transform in its local forward direction, which follows the object's z-axis. If the raycast hits something, we're then drawing a debug line from the origin point to the point of impact. Most tutorials will have the player's camera as the origin point for your shots, as this naturally means your shots will be centered on screen. I've set this as our starting point, as you can see here, and if I hop into play mode, you can see this in action. Each time I click, a debug line from the camera to the point I'm looking at is drawn. So our first goal is to change where our shot originates from, and this is actually pretty easy to do. Under a weapon, we're going to add a new empty game object, and we're going to name it muzzle, which is the term for the end of a firearm's barrel. We're then going to reposition it, that way it's towards the end of our weapon. We need the game object to be a child of the weapon, that way any movement we add to it will also change the direction we shoot in. This can be procedural recoil, animations, weapon sway, and so on. The specific method and how it feels is going to be left up to you because it's going to dictate how your game feels. Under our script, we're going to change our shot origin game object so that it is no longer the player's camera and is instead our brand new muzzle game object. Then, if we enter play mode, you can see that the shot now comes out of the end of the weapon instead of from the camera. You can also see that if we manually turn the weapon, the shots go off in that new direction. This brings us to the main problem with this method of firing. I previously mentioned camera stacking as a way to hide the fact that your weapon is clipping into the environment. This is fine from the player's perspective normally, since in most games, shots originate from the camera. If you can't see through something, you can't shoot through it. However, it doesn't truly fix the clipping, it just masks it so the player can't tell the clipping is happening. Our shot origin will still end up being inside the wall, and this has the side effect of allowing the player to shoot through the wall. One way of dealing with this is to turn the weapon away to a less than ideal direction, often to the side or straight up. To do this, we're going to need another script. In my case, I've named it Clip Prevention. The idea here is we want to check a certain distance in front of the player if an obstacle is in the way. If we hit something, we want to turn our weapon out of the way based on how close we are. If we hit nothing, we want to aim straight ahead. To do this, we're going to need three public variables. A game object to act as the origin for our new raycast, a float to act as the distance we will be checking, and a vector 3 which we'll use as the maximum rotation if we're touching something. We will also need two private variables, a float to hold our position in the lerp, and a raycast hit to store our hit data. In our update function, we want to shoot a raycast and check and see if it hits anything. If we do hit something, we're going to determine how close it is as a percentage of our check distance. If not, we want to default to the fully extended position. We then want to clamp this value between 0 and 1 to prevent any unexpected results. Finally, we're going to set the local rotation of the object this script will be attached to, in our case our weapon, as determined by our position between pointing straight ahead and whatever we set as our maximum rotation. To get this to work, we need to first attach the script to our weapon. We then need to create another empty game object as a child of the same game object our weapon is parented to. I've named mine Clip Projector. We want this to be offset slightly forward of the player so it's just inside the player's collider. We're then going to drag this into the game object field of our script. We then want to set the distance we want to check. Finally, we set our maximum rotation. In my case, I want our weapon pointing left if we're up against a wall. As such, I've set our Y value to -90, which will rotate our weapon 90 degrees counterclockwise as we approach an obstacle. Entering play mode, you can now see that our weapon turns to the left as we walk up to the wall. You can also see our shots correctly shoot off in the direction our weapon starts aiming in. There are some tweaks you'll probably want to make based on how you want your game to feel. The most impactful is probably the position of your clip projector and the distance you want to check. You'll probably also want to lerp to the extended position over the course of a few frames, rather than snapping to it when peeking around a corner. You may also want to prevent firing entirely once you reach a certain position, which is fairly easy to do if you add a reference to this script in your main weapon script. From here, it's a matter of layering on other effects to your weapon: animations, weapon sway, physics, and so on. In my main project, I've got all three of those affecting the weapon. The reason I'm making this tutorial is because I don't think it's a good fit for my project, so I'll be removing it, but I like the idea and hope other people use it. The devlog will still come out 2 weeks from now, so I hope you join me then to see how I refactor everything. If you found this helpful, drop a like or a comment to show me. And if you want to stay up to date on my main project or get notified when I release any other tutorials, be sure to subscribe. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time.